Hi, my name is Carol Beth Anderson. You can call me Beth, and I'm an audiobook narrator. I use Adobe Audition when I'm producing audiobooks. And so I wanted to create a free series of videos showing you the tips and techniques that work for me with Audition. Your mileage may vary. Please always consult a professional audiobook engineer or audio engineer. I'm not one. If you have any questions, I'm not claiming these are the best ways to do things. I'm just saying, hey, this is the stuff that works for me. Hopefully you can get some tips out of it. The first video will just be about setting up Audition, getting it to the point where it's where it needs to be so that you can get started on a project. So let's jump right in. Okay, here we are in Adobe Audition. The first thing I want to point out is that at the top left here you have two views, Waveform view or Multitrack view. I always work in Waveform view in Audition. And I actually use Multitrack a little bit. I'll talk about that later. But in terms of recording, editing, mastering, I'm working in Waveform view. Now, there are some real benefits to Multitrack view, but I like Waveform view because it allows me to use something called a Spectral Frequency Display that we'll be talking about soon. So just FYI, this series of videos will be based on using Audition primarily in Waveform view. First thing I want to teach you is how to create keyboard shortcuts in Audition, because we're going to do that a lot throughout these videos. I love keyboard shortcuts, and it's really simple. All you do is you go to Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, and then it's going to bring up a picture of your keyboard and what the different keys are assigned to. So let's say that we wanted to create a keyboard shortcut for, we're just going to find something here, for autosave. I don't know why we'd want a shortcut for that, but if we wanted to open up the autosave pane of the preferences dialog, I would click autosave here. And you can search up here for whatever it is you're wanting to create a shortcut for, whatever action. So I'm going to click autosave. And the cool thing is I can either grab one of these gray keys that isn't already assigned to a shortcut, and I can drag it down next to autosave, and suddenly there's my keyboard shortcut. So now I've got the semicolon is used for autosave. I'm going to click the X there and take that off. But if I wanted to keep it there, I would just keep it there. The other thing that's cool is maybe I don't want to use any of these gray keys. Maybe I really want to use the 9 key, but it's already being used for Waveform Editor. And if I still want it to be used for Waveform Editor, I could then click Command and see if the 9 key is available plus Command. It is, so I would just hold down the Command key on my keyboard, like my actual keyboard. I would grab the 9, I would drag it down to autosave, and there you can see Command plus 9 is now autosave. I could do the same thing by clicking Shift on my keyboard. Shift plus 9. Oops, I lost my autosave. I don't know where it just went. Let's say we want it for Amplify minus 15. I think I already have. No, fade in. We're going to use it for fade in. Shift plus 9 is now fade in. And so all you're doing is you're dragging the keys that you want. And if you want to use any other keyboard keys in addition to the main key, like Shift, Command, Option, or even mixtures of those, I could say Shift and Command. I'm clicking both of those on my keyboard. And then I could say that Shift Command 9 is now going to be fade in by dragging it over there. And again, I can click the X if I want to undo that. So that's how we set keyboard shortcuts in Audition. Once you've set up your shortcuts, you click OK, and we will be using that, like I said, throughout the process. All right, the next thing I want you to learn is how to check your audio hardware settings and make sure that you're set up properly to in terms of like your microphone being set up. So we would go to Adobe Audition, Settings, Audio Hardware. Now I check this pretty often because I just really want to make sure that I'm set up properly. And so I've actually assigned the H key for this. I went into Edit, Keyboard Shortcuts, and assigned the H key for audio hardware settings. So it's within, like I said, it's within Settings, or it could be called Preferences if you're in Windows. It comes up as Preferences once you open it here, and you would click Audio Hardware Settings. So our default input should be whatever your audio interface is. Or if you've got a direct plug-in USB microphone, that should come up as your input. So you're going to set that as the default input. My interface is the M2. And you also want to set your output as the interface, which is M2. In my case, yours might be a Scarlett, or like it said, it could be something else. The reason I'm setting the output there is because I have my headphones plugged into my interface. And by using the interface as the input and the output, I can have my headphones plugged into the interface, and I can be monitoring myself through my headphones while I'm recording. If you're using a USB mic, I'm guessing your headphones maybe plug into the computer instead, and you would choose the headphone option as your default output. But I'm not really sure. You're going to have to figure that out if you're using a USB mic. And we would press OK. To keep these in the right place, you can go into your computer's sound settings. I have it set up in my computer where that's always up here, and I can click down to sound settings. But you can also click on your system settings. If you need to, you can search for those on your computer, but click on system settings on your Mac. They're always down at the bottom of the screen for me. And search for sound, and we click on that. And what you want to do is you want to set your default output and input as your interface. So I'm setting my output for M2, my input for M2, and that way those are my defaults. And every time I come to my computer and I connect it to my interface, hopefully that interface will already be what's connected to Audition. But again, even if you set it as the default, you still want to check before you start recording to make sure you're recording into the right mic. There's nothing like recording a couple minutes of a chapter or a whole chapter and realizing you accidentally recorded through the crappy built-in mic on your computer. So check those audio hardware settings. Again, I have H as my keyboard shortcut for that. I check before I start. There I am. My input and my output are set as my audio interface, and I say OK. There we go. The next thing I want to teach you is how to go ahead and start a file that you're going to use for your first recording. So we're in Waveform view. There are different ways to start the file. You can actually just click Waveform if you want to. Other ways you can do it is you can click File, New, Audio File, and Audio File is in Waveform view. So if you're in Multitrack, you could actually click Audio File, and it will switch you over to Waveform view. Or once again, I have a shortcut set up in keyboard shortcuts. I just use Shift Command N, and it brings up that same little new audio file. It brings up your options. So this part's really important. You want to set up this audio file properly so that your file is in the right format for audiobooks. I'm going to take a quick drink. All right, first thing you need on here is your file name. So you can name your file whatever you want, but if you're working like with a publisher, they may have a certain way they want you to name it, and it's probably going to be something like this. So this is what I've started naming my files recently. First thing will be what number of file it is on the book that you're doing. So let's say that you're setting up chapter 1, but you know that there's also opening credits plus a dedication plus a prologue. So there are actually going to be 3 files before chapter 1. So chapter 1 would actually be file number 4 for that book. So I would put 04, or if it's going to be a lot of files, you could even put 004 if you're going to have more than 100 files or more. And then I'm just going to do 04 underscore. And then I would put the book or whatever, the book title or whatever acronym or whatever I'm using for the book. So let's just say we're going to call this RGB for really good book. Let's just say that's the name of our book. Underscore and and then you would put chapter 1 or just CH1, however you're putting it together. We'll go ahead and put chapter 1. All right, so we've given it a file that makes sense, so we're going to know what this is. I also, at the end, do another underscore and call it raw, because this is my raw file. Now, if you're not doing your own editing and mastering, you probably don't need to put raw at the end. But if you are, it's just nice to remember this is my raw file that nothing has been done to. So when I'm doing my own editing and mastering, I add raw to the end. Next, we're going to choose a sample rate, and it should be at 44,100 for audiobooks. Set it once, and then you can forget it, although it's always a good idea to make sure that the settings didn't change, but they shouldn't change on you. Channels, you're going to click mono, because generally audiobook producers want, and ACX and all of those places want mono files. And bit depth, you can select 16. By the way, if you're recording for ACX, it's fine for your WAV files to be a higher bit depth if you want, but your final MP3 files are going to be 16 bits. And so I go ahead, I've started just starting my files at 16 so that when I work with publishers, I know that I'm sending them those 16-bit files. But always check with the publisher you're working with. They may ask for something else, and if so, just make sure you set that up properly. So here we are. We've got that file, and we're going to click OK. The important thing to remember is that this file isn't actually saved as a WAV file on your computer yet. It's open in Audition. You can record there, but it's not a WAV file on your computer yet. So we have to save it again. I know that's kind of weird, but you have to save it again, and I suggest doing that immediately. So you can go up to File, Save, or just Command Save. That you don't even have to set up that keyboard shortcut. It's already there. Command S. Command S for save. Uh-oh. Why is this not working? There we go. Command S for save. You're going to browse to put it in the proper place. So I'm going to go ahead and put mine on my desktop just because I don't need this file later and I can easily delete it. But generally, you're going to have a folder with audiobooks, and you'll have a folder specifically for that audiobook, and you can save it in that file. And then we just click Save. Here, you've got sample type. This is the stuff you already set up, and so you don't have to set it up again. It's already there. And format settings, that should all be right. WAV uncompressed, 16-bit integer. Go ahead and make sure Include Markers and Other Metadata is checked. And we can click OK, and now we have a saved file. I'm going to tell you, I usually save my files like dozens of times as I'm recording. Save, 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 over and over in case anything happens so that you don't lose part of the chapter that you just recorded. All right, we have started our first file. Very exciting. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and turn on what's called Spectral Frequency Display. I love Spectral Frequency Display. I'm not going to explain to you why right now because we're going to get into that in a future video. I'm just going to tell you if you can start out by starting to use Spectral Frequency Display if you aren't already, I really think it's going to improve the quality of your product because it gives you more information about the sound that you're recording, and you can just do more things with it. This will make sense later. Let me just first show you how to turn it on. And this is another set it and forget it thing. Once it's on, it should stay on. So we're going to go up here to the top to View, and you click Show Spectral Frequency Display. There we go. The top part is going to be our waveform. The bottom's going to be our spectral frequency display. You'll see later what that actually looks like once we start recording. You can also customize the colors here. So I'm going to do just a really quick recording just so that you can see what it looks like when I customize colors. Hey, I'm doing a really quick recording. There we go. We even got some footsteps on the stairs at the very end of that recording. I record in a studio under my stairs, and so I frequently have to stop when I've got dog or kids on the stairs, or husband, all sorts of people on the stairs. Alrighty, so we've got a quick recording here. You can see that my waveform is purple because I just think it's pretty, and here's how we actually set that up. You're going to go up to Adobe Audition, Settings, Appearance. And from there, you can set your waveform background or foreground. Mine's purple. Your background, which is white. So you might like the darker look. I tend to like a lighter look. But if you wanted to, you could set the waveform background to black and have maybe like a yellow foreground. Whatever colors you like here, you can go ahead and change a bunch of different colors here. I think there's also a way to change the colors of your spectral frequency display. In fact, that may be down here. Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's where you change it. I think there's a way, but I've just got it on the default. So anyways, change that appearance however you want to and click OK. There we go. All right, the next thing I'm going to teach you to do is how to set up punch and roll so that you've got your settings where they need to be, and then we'll be ready for our second video that will be coming up later called recording. All right, setting up punch and roll. If you don't know what punch and roll is, I'm not going to try to do a lot of explaining on that. Please Google it. You will find a bajillion videos and articles on it. But punch and roll is generally these days industry standard for people who are recording in their home studios without like an audio engineer recording with them. So it's a way to basically do some editing as you go where you don't have a bunch of mistakes to edit out later. So setting up punch and roll. First thing, this is actually pretty simple. You can see this little red record button down here. And I'm going to right-click on there, and it gives you some different options. So it's probably default on instant record mode. You're going to change it to punch and roll mode. Click it again with right-click it, and then make sure it's on overwrite, not insert. Overwrite, not insert. This may make more sense later when we're going over recording, but just for now, know that that is the settings that you need. Punch and roll mode, overwrite, not insert. The last thing you can do to set up your punch and roll is go to Adobe Audition, Settings, Playback and Recording. Here you can set up your pre-roll duration. That's the amount that Adobe Audition will read back to you before you punch in. So like you make a mistake, you stop it, you put the cursor where you want it. Audition will read to you 1 second or 2 seconds or 5 seconds of what came before the place where you're punching in. Again, if this doesn't make sense, please Google it, because once you understand punch and roll, this will make perfect sense. So your pre-roll, I like a really short pre-roll, 2 seconds, but I have a friend who uses my studio quite a bit, and he likes a 4 or 5 second pre-roll. So you can just click on that, change it to whatever you want, and click OK. And you've got your pre-roll set up. All right, everything. Oh, I almost forgot one thing. This is actually really important. There are certain things you're going to need to be on your screen. You might be looking at your screen going, your screen does not look like mine, Beth. Well, that's because I've moved things around. Sometimes accidentally, I'll end up moving stuff around and going, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that. But there are certain things you're going to use as we're working on our files here. So let me show you some different things. You've got what's called a level meter here. Let me show you what happens with that level meter when we're playing something. Hey, I'm doing a really quick recording. And if you know much about setting up, we're not going to get into setting up your audio hardware equipment. That's just not what this video series is about. But when you're setting up your mic and you're trying to set your levels like on your interface, you're going to really need to look at what these levels are down here. And it's something you want to be able to monitor as you're recording too. So let me show you what happens as I'm recording here. Hey, I'm doing a really quick recording. Okay, do you see how as I'm recording, that level meter changes? It's going to show me where my levels are. And I like that level meter to be like really big and obvious. And that's why, let me stop this recording. That's why I've got my level meter down here at the bottom where it's just really easy to see. But the cool thing about Audition is you can actually grab this little thing with 3 lines and you can move stuff around. Oops. Oh, see, and now I'm having trouble doing it. Whoops, I just moved it up to the top. I didn't really mean to do that, but that's how you do it. You move it around. So I'm going to move it back down to where it was, and now it's back down to down to the bottom. So where if you want your level meter on the right-hand side, you could totally move it over there. But again, I just like it at the bottom because I think it's really nice and easy to see. Oops, I moved it to the left. Didn't mean to do that. There we go. It's back where it needs to be. So you can move stuff around like that. Let me show you some other stuff that you're going to want on your screen. Files. if you don't see your files anywhere, go to Window and make sure Files is selected. I just deselected it. I'm going to select it again. And it comes up here on the top left, and you can move it around however you want. I like it to be the first thing over here. You're also going to want favorites. Again, all of these are found by clicking Window and making sure they're selected. So favorites, wherever favorites pops up, you can move it over here next to Files if you like it there. And if you don't, you can move it somewhere else. But we're going to use these favorites later. Underneath Files and Favorites, and you can change how big these little window things are, these groups. Underneath Files and Favorites, I have 4 different things. I've got Batch Process, Markers, Properties, and Match Loudness, because those are all things that I use on a regular basis, and I like to have them really easily accessible right here to the left of what I'm recording. And so to get all of those things, Batch Process, Markers, Properties, Match Loudness, again, you're just going to click on Window, select whatever it is that you want, and then you're going to drag it over to where you need it to be. So you can move stuff around. If I wanted my batch process to be up here next to Files and Favorites, I would just move it. I don't, so I'm going to move it back. But you can just move stuff around to different parts of the screen. So this is how I like mine set up. Oh, and then you want history here. That's just to show you everything you've done. You can see all I've done is recorded twice. But if I was doing anything else, like if I wanted to delete part of this, I'm going to click Delete. And you would see down here that I had deleted audio. Then I can use Command Z or Edit Undo, and it'll come back up. So we've got that audio is back now. It's not deleted anymore. So I like to see my history. That's the stuff that's important to me to have on my screen. As you work, you may find that there's other stuff that's really important to you to have on your screen. And now that you know how to find it, basically everything's under Window. You just open it, and then you drag it to where you want it to be on the screen. All right, that's our setup. Everything's ready. Our next video is going to be all about recording in Adobe Audition. I'll see you then.